Hey everyone, I'm Mike Weiner, Joe Peterson, and this is Pints and Politics. So here we are in Staples, Minnesota, at a undisclosed location, and we have a very Easter festive theme behind us.
Yeah,
We have the bunny rabbits.
yeah.
I
Easter's
love
coming
this.
up.
It is
I'm actually really excited. Easter's actually my favorite holiday. I like the painting of the eggs. I like the resurrection story.
I do.
It's fun.
Easter and Christmas. It's very close. I love Christmas midnight mass, but
Yeah,
Easter goes way up there too with the resurrection. Without the resurrection, there really wouldn't be much of a Christian
yeah,
religion, would there? So
yeah. It's
look
life
forward to
over
it.
death. It's
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do a full Easter like theme kind of a deal coming up.
Stay away from politics on that one. Just talk about Easter.
Yeah, kind of like how we did on Christmas.
Awesome. I like that.
So that'll be fun.
Set aside the politics for one day.
Yeah, that'll be.
Perfect.
It's a nice little break because I don't know about you, but like every once in a while I kind of get fed up with politics and I just need to like throw my phone away and just kind of like shut off.
I do. Trust me, I get that same
You get
feeling
the
at
same
times.
feeling?
It's like I want to just come home and spend time with my family and just put everything behind me.
Yeah.
But I got to do this just once.
Once.
Uh,
There you go. You got
What's
the
that?
ears.
Got the rabbit ears. All right. So, what topic we're going to talk about today? I think we mentioned Uber,
Yeah, something's going on with Uber in the cities.
Uber and Lyft down in the cities, and there was the city of Minneapolis said that they were going to mandate that all the Uber drivers, I believe, would have to have a certain amount of pay, and what that caused instantly is those services to say, well, we can't operate at a profit margin with that, so we're going to pull out of Minneapolis. Um, it's very interesting. So I was looking at some stuff,
Yeah.
and a lot of younger people are actually more in tune or more inclined towards socialism,
Yep.
right? So a lot of young people would say they would be open to the idea at least of socialism. But here's a prime example: the outpouring of people, young people especially, who are saying, you pull out Lyft or Uber out of Minneapolis, and this is terrible. This is a crazy idea. So they're very upset. But at the same time, you're okay with government control.
Yep.
This is the direct effect of more government control in your lives. And when government picks winners and losers, when they say we're going to dabble in these things that we shouldn't be dabbling, how negative that becomes. So I hope young people are paying attention. I hope they're saying, oh, jeepers, maybe government shouldn't be sticking their fingers in these
Yeah.
things. The only bill, out of all of the bills that got passed last year, the only bill that got vetoed by the governor was the Uber bill, we called it.
Yep.
And now here we are, Minneapolis is basically going to implement that and look at the negative pushback right away. I hope it's an eye opener for the younger generation.
It's gonna be like jumping in a frozen lake because that it's a splash of cold water. Just it's not direct enough as an example, but it is. People are gonna freak out because my generation loves Uber.
Right.
We don't like drinking and driving, right? We're not fans of that, and so you get a designated driver, a DD, or you get an Uber.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about some of my friends in the cities. They're gonna freak out. Like, why is that happening? Why can't they get an Uber anymore? How are they gonna go out?
Right.
And you don't want to be walking downtown Minneapolis at midnight.
No,
Not exactly the safest place to be.
exactly. So there again, it's like you want the government to fix your problems for you, but this is what happens when the government fixes the problems. There's intended consequences and unintended consequences. Yes, the drivers are, there's providing a service and they want to make more money. I totally understand that. At the same time, this is what happens
Mhm.
when government gets involved in things they shouldn't. When they can dictate the prices or money on these services, there's going to be a negative,
Yeah. So are
drawback.
they setting a cap on pricing?
No, I think that they're saying there's going to be like a minimum pay for drivers, and I won't quote me.
Okay.
I thought it was like 15, almost $16 an hour or something to that effect. And
Okay.
and I was doing some reading into that. The profit margin actually for Lyft and Uber is actually really low.
hmm
So they're providing a service, very little profit margin. And I think this is the first, was it last year? This year is the first year they actually showed a profit. They've been in
Really?
business for like 10 years.
Wow.
So they're huge business, but it's a service-based business.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I know about Uber is that the prices will change based on like what time of day it is. Because if it's 2 a.m. at bar close, you're looking at like $30 to $50 for a ride because everyone wants one. You get that supply and demand kind of a deal. But
Well, that's interesting because we had a bill that we were discussing this week and was price gouging when it comes to emergencies.
yeah, that's
So on the one hand, we're going to say you can't price gouge when if there's a storm and it comes to an emergency,
yeah,
but when Uber or Lyft charges more, or when those drivers charge more at 2 o'clock in the morning, somehow that's okay. Really, what it comes down to is supply and demand. And that's the market. The market will deal with
yeah,
that. If you charge too much, people will say, "Oh, I'll go someplace else." The other comparison, and I'll use this. So, up in our area, we got a lot of Amish,
yep,
right? And what happens is a lot of the Amish that have sawmills, particularly, what they do is they work with a broker
hmm,
because they can't line up the works for themselves. They don't have the access or the means. So they will work with brokers. The brokers say, we can supply, or we can have you cut this material. You can supply these businesses, and we get this cut. Basically, the same service as what Uber and Lyft does, right? But what happens is, and this is what probably should have been done with the drivers that want more money, is the Amish after time will say, you know what, we can work directly with the customers.
yeah,
And they end up making those relationships and figuring that service out themselves and end up going around the brokers. So the drivers that are now with Uber and Lyft can start their own service. There are
mhm,
cities across, I think Houston, or there are some cities that I had read about anyways, that have their own um, service available, basically their own
yeah,
marketing, where if you're in Houston, Texas, you can dial whatever that rideshare service is, and it connects you with the drivers.
yeah,
So the drivers could do this, and that's that market stepping in and saying, this is a solution to this problem.
yeah. And I think if Uber really wanted to, they could just let the drivers like they could solve this issue at a company level. Say like, hey, this is the minimum, but you can charge extra if you feel like you need to.
Could do it that way, but there again, should the government be setting those minimums?
No,
Should the
no,
government be dabbling in this and saying your profit margin is too high, yours isn't high enough? No. It's that's where we run
yeah,
into the issues, and that actually becomes socialism.
yeah.
When the government controls the means of production or costs,
Yep,
it
set
doesn't work.
prices is a dangerous thing because basically, we when we talked about that socialist grocery store in Chicago that was popping up, government run,
Mhm.
like the quality is going to be whatever the government says, and that quality can be whatever somebody pays, whatever that committee is, and it's really open to corruption, and I think that's what bothers me the most.
So now let's go back. We always tie these things back one way or another to the Greeks and Romans,
Yes,
right? What happened towards the end of their civilization, and in order for things to be equalized, the Caesar stepped in and said, you can only charge this much. They basically took the means of production into their hands, and it disenfranchised farmers, businesses, to the point where they just said, we're not going to produce. They could produce at the
yeah,
profit margins there wasn't any incentive for them to do that. So this has stupidly been tried many times in the past. It has never worked, but here, for some reason in Minneapolis, we're going to try
try
it
it again.
again.
Well, it's because it wasn't real socialism. They're going to do real socialism this time. What's the saying?
Right.
Real communism has never been tried. I think that's what it always is. It's like you'll have like 10 million people die in a communist country. Well, it's not real communism. Let's try it this way, and we'll kill 50 million people
That's
this
right.
time.
They didn't do it right the first,
Yeah,
30 countries that it's been tried in, but here in America, we'll get it right.
yeah.
America.
It's establishing a pattern, really, what it is.
Well, and if we learn anything from history and what's going on right now, some of the people that are flooding across that southern border,
Mhm.
what are they leaving? They're leaving countries in South America, Central and South America, who have embraced socialism and has wrecked their economies. They
Yeah.
have no opportunities other than to come to the United States. So if it worked so well, government control in
Venezuela.
Venezuela, then why are we seeing Venezuelans coming to the United States? Don't or stop duplicating the failed government of the past and of other countries. Don't even bring it here.
Yeah. I think part of it's greed because our politicians will make a lot of money off of it, like for themselves. And I don't think they really, there's not a sense of neighborhood much anymore or community even. So it's like, as long as I get mine, like I'll be fine. It's kind of that Andrew Tate persona. It's the thing I don't like about Andrew Tate. I don't know if you know who he is.
I have actually watched some of his stuff.
Yeah. And his whole thing is like, get that bag, make that money, get them girls, buy 50 cars. It's at the
And then
same
what?
time. Yeah. And then what? So my thing is like, I'm going to surround myself with people, like you, someone like Steve Boyd, even just having community, just having friends kind of a deal is
Those
pretty
things
big.
don't bring you happiness. That materialism
Yeah.
doesn't bring you happiness. And there's been studies on that too, where they've talked about, oh, if you just get this much money, does it bring more happiness? And I think Jordan Peterson talked about it.
I'm sure.
And I don't remember the number, but it's really interesting. It's lower than you would think. Like if you just have enough to get by, that's where you really start to appreciate it.
Yeah.
More than that, and you end up, the desire is more and more, and that's a human nature, a flaw in human nature, probably that we keep falling into. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. But the younger generation are really not happy with this bill. I've never personally used Uber or Lyft or anything like that. When I was on the floor last year, had a lot of questions about that bill, so I have no experience. But the premise of the bill is bad. The premise of what's happening in Minneapolis is obviously driving that business out of the state, and even our whole state, the way things are going, that the tax, the legislation, regulation is driving businesses out of our state, and Minneapolis is leading the way on that.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I want to go back to some that you mentioned. You talked about price gouging. What's your
Sure.
opinion on that during a crisis?
Well, I
Like personal opinion.
personal opinion. So we used the example of the storms before.
Yeah.
So tornado comes through town, right? And you see all of this stuff going on where people are trying to clean up, they're trying to get things back to normal. There's some insurance things where you have to, get the roof or a tree off the roof within a certain amount of time because it can add more damage if there's more rain and so forth. So the people that are providing those services, probably have to work longer hours.
Yep.
They have to get more equipment. They have to find help on short notice, which means they're probably paying at a premium,
Yep.
and they're going to probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, there's some that will probably take advantage of that situation. Um, but most of them, think about this. If you're up here in Staples, Minnesota, and there's a storm that comes through and those things happen, do you think your local businesses are going to gouge their friends and neighbors?
No.
Because after that storm
Oh,
cleanup is gone, uh,
maybe. I don't know. Well, it's because I don't think this area, like Todd Wadena County area, has really had much crises. Like
what
we
about
get a
Wadena?
well, they had that tornado that went through, but
Right.
there wasn't an issue of supplies
Well, there was a
per
lot of
se.
trees and stuff that went down. But here's the thing: if you're a small business, or if you're a business in that area, you want to keep doing business after that storm, after that event. So, and if your friends and neighbors, if the community you live in thinks that you gouge them during that storm, do you think they're going to come back afterwards?
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. So it's not in the best interest of the business to gouge their customers during that. They're probably going to explain, look, I'm sorry, but we had to get a lift costed us, an extra $500 or something to get this done.
Yep.
And because of this, we've been putting X amount of hours and we've got overtime and we got all these other expenses. And I apologize, but this is what the bill says. So the other thing is the flip side
Well,
of
the thing is,
this.
that's not price gouging. That's negotiating.
Well, okay, so what that bill in Minnesota did though is that
Yeah.
you can't charge more than, I believe, the last 3 months what your fees and stuff have been.
Really.
Yes.
That's weird.
So now think about that. If you have extra expenses,
Yeah.
and this is a unique situation, all of a sudden you have the potential of going backwards on those jobs as a
Hmm.
business. What are you going to do? I would imagine you're probably just going to say, "Hey, look, I can't afford to do this right now.
Hmm.
I can't go backwards to do these services." So you're not solving the problem by legislation like that.
Yeah. No,
Let the
it's
market do its business.
yeah. This is a top-down approach when for a bottom-up solution. It's a bottom-up problem, and you can't do a top-down approach. I think is what I'm trying to say. And when we were talking about price gouging, I'm thinking back in like 2020 when there was that toilet paper shortage. There was a guy who got arrested for price gouging. Well, I don't know if he was arrested, but all of his stuff was confiscated that he was trying to sell.
Who could forget the
Yeah.
toilet paper shortage of 2020?
Oh, I'll never forget. I'm enraged about that
You'd wipe
because,
away a tear just thinking about it.
yeah, right. But no, that was the thing. Someone had hand sanitizer and toilet paper when they were selling it out of their garage at a premium because they had a whole bunch of it. And I'm just sitting here, I'm thinking like, probably not worth confiscating his stuff. I'm granted the guy's being a prick about it, but like at the same time, it's like you have a thing that people want, and you get to decide what it would take for you to part with said thing.
Supply and demand.
Yep, supply and demand.
Right.
And I don't think it's the government's job to come in and tell you what you can and can't do. And that's kind of a problem with drugs, like pharmaceuticals. Like I know Biden's putting some kind of cap at $35 a month for insulin or something. He mentioned that, or putting some price cap on insulin. And like I have a brother who's diabetic, and it's like that's great that it's short, but that they're lowering the price. But is it a top-down solution?
Well, and we see this all the time. Government gets involved and they say they're going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Um, so like some of the reimbursements for Medicare, Medicaid, they pay a fraction of the bill. So who ends up picking up the tab on that?
The taxpayer.
The taxpayers, right? Or the businesses, the commercial policies end up paying more because Medicare and Medicaid don't reimburse up to the full amount. And so we're keeping the price down for some people, but it's ending up costing others more.
Yeah.
So is that fair to the taxpayer? Is that fair to the people?
This whole thing is just screaming government trying to be a charity kind of a deal. And
Well, I think we talked about it at the State of the Union or State of the Disunion address that Biden had. How many presidents, think back and look at it, how many presidents have talked about fixing the prices of drugs and pharmaceuticals? I mean, this goes back probably 10, 12 years, I'm guessing, if not more.
well, definitely longer because I think it goes back to Reagan, doesn't it?
It's possible. But here they've been talking about it for that long, have never fixed the problem, but
Hmm.
darn it, this time we're going to get her done. It's like the southern border, another prime example. Go back, Clinton talked about it. Clinton was talking about it, said, we're a nation of
Hmm.
immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. You know,
Yeah.
he did it. Obama did it. Here we are 30 years later, and they haven't fixed the problem because
Well, we had one guy who was fixing the problem, Trump.
Huh,
And that we did not have much of an issue under Trump with that.
with the southern border,
No.
illegal immigration was way down, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And we've always that there is truth to what Clinton said. We are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. The people who came here legally, who did exactly what they're supposed to, who went through the system, who paid in what they're doing, and now you're basically slapping them in the face and just saying anybody can come. It's kind of like if you paid off your student loans, you worked your tail off, you were financially responsible, fiscally responsible, and now president is going to say we're just going to forgive these debts.
Yeah,
What about all of us that did what we were supposed to? How is that fair?
it's really not, which is one of the issue that I suppose the younger generation struggles with because like people with student loans, like they kind of feel like it was predatory almost, just the way that it's set up. Because everyone's like, you got to go to college, you got to take out this loan, you got to do it. It's your future. They go to college, they get their degree, they get their education, and all the opportunities. It's like, well, I got 50,000 or $100,000 in student loans to pay back, and the only job I can get is a barista at Starbucks. Like,
And probably not a career that you're really going to
yeah,
maintain the rest of your life.
yeah. So it's kind of it feels like the college route is almost a scam. That's kind of how I feel about it. I mean, I learned a lot when I went to college, and I'm sure you did.
Sure, but there again, did you go after schooling for something that was useful,
Yeah.
something that you could use? There's so many degrees, so many things that they have right now that isn't really relatable to the workforce out there. Is it something that is in demand? I don't know if gender studies is something that you can probably take into the workforce. Maybe it is. Maybe it's something I don't know. But
Depends on the job. I think Google, you can make money at Google for that,
okay, what's the
but Google just wasted like $1 billion on an AI that doesn't work properly.
we're gonna have to talk about AI sometime.
Yeah, we'll get into that one day.
Oh, that's interesting.
A whole rabbit hole.
That one's gonna be a discussion. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, you're right about that. They were sold the idea. And so many high school students were told, you got to go to college. You go to college and you're going to make X amount of dollars more over the rest of your life. And what actually happened is they went to school for something that they can't use in the real world. And now they're strapped with this debt. Well, it's almost like predatory lending. You're right. They got sold on an idea that this was the best for them. And now they feel like they've been shafted.
Yeah. Which is ironic because if you go to a trade school, like, you can get a job before you graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a robotics program in the Staples and Brainerd area. They place 90% of their students before they graduate.
And if you look at it right now, the kids that are getting, I shouldn't call them kids, but the younger people who are getting involved in those trades,
And they're
they're
making good
making
money.
good.
Good money in that.
Yep, the shortages in those fields are unbelievable, and the money, the potential that they have to make is huge.
Yeah, I think you can start at like $70,000 as a welder.
I got to get out of politics.
Be
I'm gonna go work a better job than this.
a welder.
I can weld. I can burn some rods.
It's probably a lot less of a headache to burn rods than it is to work politics.
A lot less BS to deal with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because when I was down at the Capitol with you and like some of the things, it feels like it's middle school or high school drama.
Yeah.
I watched like Nancy Pelosi tear a sheet of paper in half during a speech, and it's like,
Yeah.
I know you're doing it for clout. It's just,
I get frustrated with it. It does seem juvenile at times. It really does.
it really is.
Hmm.
But so, what do we have to look forward to at the Capitol next week? We got anything fun going on?
I forgot to look at the schedule, to be honest with you. The SRO bill did get passed. The governor signed that.
Oh, that's good.
The school resource officers. So Representative Jeff Whitty spent a lot of time on that, and I think it was a good bill. It was something that needed to be done. I think there were about 8 Democrats that voted against it.
Oh, really?
Most of them were the same defund the police type of candidates. Uh, Defund the police and also DSA candidates. I know I've talked about that before. Everybody's familiar with the DFL, Democrat Farmer Laborers. That's your grandpa's Democrat Party, but the DSA basically is an offshoot or part of the Democrat Party. It's getting to be a bigger part of the Democrat Party, and that's the Democrat Socialists of America.
Hmm.
And they are pushing for socialism in our state. And
Yeah, they want to ban beef because cows fart. It's bad for the environment. That's the kind of thought level we're dealing with the DSA. Because yeah, I think Alexandria Cortez's Green New Deal or whatever actually mentions like we gotta have less cows because the methane that they exude from their bodies is bad for the climate.
correct me if I'm wrong, the cows belch.
Yes,
They don't actually fart.
I'm not that familiar with cows. Like I know what a cow is. I know how to eat them. I know how to cut them up and eat them, cook them. I know I can identify one in the wild. Not familiar with what comes out of their body, except for milk.
I think they belch more methane than anything else.
Yeah. But regardless, it's a weird thing to put in legislation.
Well, if we're pushing for green energy, renewable stuff, nature as much as possible,
Mhm.
animals eating grass are about as natural as you can get. When we had 50 some million buffalo
Oh yeah.
out in the plains, that was nature. Somehow, when a cow does it, it's against nature. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
No, I don't think it's meant to make sense, to be honest with you. It's just kind of one of those things. It's like, what are you doing?
Well, I think it'd be kind of cool to have some pet buffalo, but I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
I know my kids wouldn't be able to feed them when they go out to like they do our cows.
Well, they
So,
just got to get used to you. It might take a couple of generations. I know a guy up in Bluegrass area. He has a herd of buffalo. You could probably get one.
yeah, I would like a coat made out of
Yeah.
some
I think you could probably get a cat for like $100, maybe 150.
sweet
Yeah. Look into that.
big buffalo skin coat. That would be awesome.
It would be. I'm still working on trying to get a bear.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, because then you get the bear coat and then you just keep the head as a hood.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty badass.
I would love the mittens,
Oh yeah,
bare hands,
bare hands. Well, you get that all on your arm, bare arms.
bare
You
arms.
got that Second Amendment, right? No, that's good. And so, but for the SRO stuff, do you want to just give us a refresher on this legislation?
Well, basically, the school resource officers, because of the legislation last year, there was liabilities that would happen. So if the officers were involved in interaction, they could actually be sued to some extent. And because of the liabilities, most schools, a lot of the police department says we can't take the risk.
Mhm.
So until that language was fixed, they pulled out of the schools because of it. So with some language change that helps out, but there's still some things like the teachers can't use certain restraints and so
Yeah.
forth. But now pay attention to what's going on in some of those schools. I mean, the chaos that's taking place. I feel sorry for a lot of our teachers, but they have to be in that position where they're actually threatened by students. That's not right. And here they're dealing with these situations and their hands are tied to a certain extent because you got an unruly student. And what do they do?
Yeah. I don't know, to be honest with you.
I know there's a
'Cause I've heard stories and I've seen like some videos on the internet. I saw one where a teacher just got knocked out by a student. It's like how
hmm
can you promote an environment like that?
well, I know of somebody who was a teacher, was attacked by a student with a chair, if I remember right, lost a lot of the motor skills,
Oh, really?
had a heck of a time getting everything back. You would think that that person would say, we need SROs in school,
Yeah.
but at the same time is not entirely on board with that. And I, as a teacher, would want to defend myself,
Yeah.
and protect the other students.
Yeah.
Because if a student like that is getting um, so physical, so violent, the other students are at risk.
Hmm.
As parents, I think we would want our kids protected. Um, but it's gone so far, and the push is coming from the defund the police
Yeah.
sort of mentality.
It's the same place because I don't really understand the idea. It's like, hey, we want to make ourselves so vulnerable to attack and to crime, and then not let anyone deal with the crime when it happens. It's like I'll bring up gun laws, like Chicago. You're not allowed to have a gun in the city, which is their prerogative, I guess. But you have so much violence in Chicago, like it's like they call it Chirac down there. Some people do.
Murder capital of the United States, I
Yeah,
think.
and just if you're gonna let that happen, why are you gonna yell at people for protecting themselves? Because you can't demand somebody just lay down and die.
Well, I think if you look at we're talking about the conceal and carry permits not that long ago, and the people who are getting the most conceal and carry permits, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is minorities and women.
Yep.
They are feeling the most threatened and want a way to protect themselves. Now, if the crime and stuff is getting that bad, that women want to protect themselves with a gun, and we're going to restrict that or not let them protect themselves.
Yeah.
And the teacher's the same way in a school.
It's
I
the
think
same concept.
it is. It really is. So the victim or the perpetrator becomes victim, and that's not right.
And there's a big story about that that came out of New York City. There's some guy who, I think he put some dude in a headlock, a homeless guy who was like trying to stab people. He put him in a headlock and he got arrested for it.
Oh yeah,
I forget the name.
wasn't he? He was like a special forces or military
Yeah, like
background or something.
ex-military
Yeah,
background,
I remember hearing about that.
and he was just protecting people on the subway, and now he's facing criminal charges for it.
That's crazy.
I
It
just
really is.
really, I just don't understand it because we're talking about like defund the police. There's a Supreme Court case where the cops aren't legally obligated to defend you. They can say no. Pittsburgh just has a thing where they're actually not doing that anymore. And like, what do you do? Like, you can't defend yourself, and then the people who are supposed to protect you don't. Like,
It almost seems like there's part of our political environment that wants more chaos,
yeah,
that wants more destruction of the civilization. And we've talked about that before a little bit. And you got to wonder, every revolution in the past starts off with that chaos. And is that what they're pushing for? You have to wonder, as a socialist in the metro, socialism usually starts with chaos.
well,
Or,
socialism normally starts with starvation.
well, I think that's after the chaos.
Well, it's both because like Russia, there was a huge bread shortage, and then they had revolution for a while, and then they're communists. They had food for a little bit, and then they went hungry. China, well, that was chaos from World War II, I believe. But they took over China, and then they had starvation. Venezuela, the Venezuelan diet, you lose a lot of weight, because you're eating shoelaces and whatnot. Rats.
Yeah.
North Korea has a big issue with food. Their farmers are starving.
Well, that's amazing. The physical difference in people from North Korea and
Hmm.
South Korea. I think their height is less and their body weight
Yeah.
is amazing. And I wish I could meet
Malnutrition will
them.
do that to you.
Yes, it will.
It's interesting because, like, when you go north, even like where it's winter all the time, you get them big, burly German guys from the mountains. It's always those mountain people that are just huge. It's just
You,
kind of
you got to
funny.
be tougher to survive, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
They eat mostly meat and milk, and
protein.
I think there's a correlation there with meat and dairy. So if you're lactose intolerant, I feel bad for you.
But yeah, going back to Minnesota here,
Yeah.
it seems like that chaos is being promoted by certain groups of people. And people got to open up their eyes when you're voting for this Democrat Party is not. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
It is not your grandpa's Democrat Party. It's not your dad's Democrat Party anymore. It's something entirely different, and most people in Minnesota don't realize that their party. Most Democrats in Greater Minnesota don't realize their party
Hmm.
left them a long time ago.
Yeah. It's funny because we can say the same thing about the Republican Party because the Republican Party isn't what it used to be either. In fact, there's a big change going on. I think there's infighting going on.
How
Yeah.
much time do we have? Because we
We
could
got time.
probably spend another hour just on that.
Okay. I think we'll get into that later, but I do want to mention just briefly, Ottertail County has some very dramatic things going on with their kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff. I think the city of Perm lost most of their delegates.
Well, there's things that are happening. I'm not sure how it's all panned out yet. I've heard a couple different reports or couple different things, and I was kind of thinking about this the other day. What is our government based on? It's supposed to be of, by, and for the people,
Yep.
correct? And now our party who says we are constitutional, we're based on our constitution, then shouldn't our party also reflect that? We are of, by, and for the people. So that's really what the grassroots is.
Hmm.
The grassroots is the people telling the party, this is what we want. That's where that endorsement comes in. This is the candidate we want. But
Yeah.
if that's stomped out, if that's crushed by the establishment, by big money, then are we a party of, by, and for the people.
Hmm.
So I think we need to do a little bit of soul searching there as well, because
Yeah.
if we don't respect that endorsement, then how can we claim we're a party of the people? If every time the candidate who isn't the preordained candidate or the isn't the party's choice gets the endorsement and they just go to primary, how can we say we're a party of the people? So
Yeah.
we could spend
We could spend a long time on that, and we will set aside. I'm waiting for the right time because
well,
we got an endorsing convention coming up.
we
I'd like to
do,
do it around there.
and they're starting across the state now.
Hmm.
So there's several that have gone on. There's one going on next Saturday in St. Cloud. But what's going to happen, and this is the question that's been rising, is the party going to support the endorsed candidate?
Right.
Or are they going to back candidates who, you know,
So we're
that
kind
they
of,
choose?
yeah, we're bringing this to you as it's happening. So like I only mentioned Otter Tail County because there is drama, and we're kind of waiting to know more before we start talking about it.
Yeah.
Because it is actually really close to us. It's like right next door. Otter Tail County is, and there is a lot of drama going on as far as I know.
And I think we should talk about it. We should educate people about
Yeah.
what those things are, but the endorsement, and that's gonna start happening. And once we get into campaign season, we're gonna go into in depth a little bit more on some of those things and how money affects these races,
Hmm.
and people need to know. So I look forward to
Yeah. So I guess we're
spilling
giving
some
you
dirt.
we're giving a teaser on it, I guess. So you
Yeah,
have to stay tuned.
I'll show you some of the things that I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. And then if you decide to run, you can take some of this knowledge with you. It'll be cool.
You can contact me and ask questions, and I will be open and honest about what to look out for.
Yeah. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Pints and Politics. Again, I'm Drew. This is Mike. Let's see you later.